maybe wait till 7:10. If we get a couple more people in here, we'll postpone this one. I'm happy to just chat, but I'd like to get some feedback on some bigger topics. So.
Okay, I'm reading the DJI
articles.
Yeah.
Let me throw it in there so everybody knows what we're
talking about. Have they put any kind of communication or response out regarding the whole 1 watt, 1200 milliwatt mod?
I haven't seen anything from anybody on that.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen anything from DJI about it.
Yeah, no. I haven't either. I honestly, I would be doubtful if they did say anything, but a lot of back and forth between Alex Grieve and some other folks on the whole legality of it and what is.
Yeah.
Have you seen what? Thing. Did you see what DJI did on their Part 15 certification? That they got Part 15 certification not on all of the channels that they issue on the digital FPV devices. So I want to say 1267, but I'm sure if once I say it, it's the wrong numbers. But it's not all 8, and so it skips. And so you need a ham license for some of the channels, but not all of them. And so Dan picked up on that aspect and was asking the question. See, my New York comes through asking. Is there a different threshold of power if you have Part 15 approval? And you don't need a ham radio license. And from what Dan and I could discern, if Dan, tell me if I got that wrong, it appears that it has the same power threshold at 5.8 gigahertz of 1 watt.
Yeah, from what I could tell, there's a limit of 1 watt going into an antenna.
Right.
And then there's other rules about if you've got so much gain on that antenna and everything, it can't go above a certain amount.
Yeah.
But those are for specific ranges of 5.8 gigahertz frequencies too.
Yes.
Did anybody actually test to see if it's actually transmitting at 12?
Not exactly how much power it is, but
it does raise.
It does put out more power. Bardwell's video has the RF meter, and he could see that it did increase the power, but the tool's not accurate enough to tell you exactly how much.
Right.
Yeah. Some of the arguments that I've seen, at least from Alex Grieve anyway, is that telecommand. So his reasoning is that it's basically no more than 1 watt, regardless of the whole telecommand thing, because the whole intent, and at least the way the FCC has been communicating this, is that is video is not part of the telecommand. That's only radio link. But yet everybody else is saying, well, according to the fine that Get FPV got, they specifically cited telecommand as a reason why they were being fined for greater than 1 watt power output. So
and
Alex is promoting somebody to take them to court.
Yeah, I think that.
No takers on that.
Yeah, I wouldn't take that one. It was in the FCC literature. There's an FCC advisory notice that describes in particular how it's the video part of the FPV that was stepping on navigation frequencies, and that was what some of there were a number of companies selling VTXs that the FCC said cease and desist, and there were some big fines associated with that. So yeah, I wouldn't bank on it just saying, oh well, it's not C to C. It interferes with emergency
maritime, I think,
navigation.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that people are marketing it, or businesses are marketing these now and are able to sell it not as an FPV thing, but as a security camera. So that's kind of weird to me that, oh, you can go greater than 1 watt power output on a security system, but yeah, not when you're using it for video feed.
Here's a website that I found helped me understand what was going on.
I would probably suggest that DJI is probably going to stay quiet on it, and a future firmware update will lock it out. Is probably what's going to happen. And I don't know that DJI can technically take a hit on that, because I don't know if that's true or not. Let me rephrase that. I don't know if DJI can take a hit on it because they didn't ship it with the intention of that.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I do. And so it was a gray area when we were working on this, and the reading we got was that if you had to alter the product in some manner, which is, other than, pressing some buttons, it appeared that the FCC was satisfied that that was sufficiently suppressed that you could ship your VTX with the variety of channels and not make the offending channels available. And so, of course, we're talking about power output as opposed to bandwidth. The bandwidth.
Right.
Okay.
Interesting.
Where did Dan?
Where did I do what?
You put
Where'd you put the document?
Where'd you put that? It's in the general section.
Yep.
I found it. Yeah, just call me a Luddite. It's okay.
Yeah, it does talk about in there that if you have a fixed point-to-point link, so if nothing's moving, then you can use more power in the 5.8 gigahertz band.
So routers and stuff like that could go higher.
A little bit, but it still sort of says the maximum transmitter output power fed to an antenna is 1 watt, but you could have higher gain antennas.
Gotcha. And so there's got to be some calculation to get the gain in there as well.
Yeah, basically you take transmitter power and you add gain and you get the EIRP. So if you're at 1 watt, that equals 30 dBm. And so a 6 dBi gain antenna means you have 36 dBm at 1 watt, which is, I think, the limit you can have for something that's not fixed point to point. If it's fixed, then it says you can go up to 53 dBm, so you can have a much higher gain antenna.
Gotcha.
Like is that a 23 gain antenna then?
Yeah, it would be. That's so interesting. 900 megahertz versus 2.4. I'm gonna have to dig through this stuff that you just posted, Dan. Interesting stuff.
Yeah, whole bunch more stuff to learn.
Absolutely.
That's it. And the DJI frequencies are all 5.8. Their channels. Yep.
Yes, and they're well within, according to Dan's little chart there. They're well within the
legal
5.8. Yeah.
Yep. They sure are. They did a good job of that. And of course, as I said, a couple of them are registered as Part 15. So with a couple of the channels, you do not need a ham license, which is very clever on their part.
I'm gonna pop up the link to that article real quick.
Yeah, well, let's see. This document says the low end is 5.725, and DJI has 2 channels that are below 5.725. Channel 1 and Channel 2 are lower than that.
Yes, they are. They're right at 5650. Well, 5660, and then but the spread of the bandwidth goes to 5650. So I'm curious on this, Dan, and one of the things I was trying to research when I wrote the article for this is digital band is tighter than analog band?
I think with the hardware, there's less they call it like the shoulder. So if you're looking at this as sort of like a wave, it's more
like
square.
A sine wave, right? Yeah.
Well, the analog feeds are much noisier and they sort of spread out and are wider. The digital equipment can make much more of a square-looking signal, I believe.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha.
So they don't bleed over as much.
Cool.
I'm impartial to sawtooth myself.
All right, guys. So happy to stay in chat. I'm gonna push our topics. One of the topics was this DJI. Let anyone with a smartphone article. We were gonna kind of chat about that. If you want to read up on that, it's just got kind of dropped today. Now we knew that DJI was going to put some remote identification tech into their new drones. Whether that was, I think the first talk was ADS-B, but this is saying that they're going to create a smartphone app that lets a person know the drone's identification number, as well as location, altitude, speed, and direction of the drone to anybody in the public. My thought is that they're going to release this in terms of a digital license plate and not your FAA ID. That way, you're protected, your personal information is protected, but we will kind of stay on top of this and see what comes out on this. But it's supposed to work within 1 kilometer using Wi-Fi. So theoretically, the drone will be transmitting that information via Wi-Fi in a 1 kilometer range. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of shapes up. Looks like the app is hitting a 2020 release. Obviously, we're kind of coming up to the end of the year after regulatory approval. So that was just kind of interesting how they are trying to tackle remote identification.
It's got to be a pretty strong signal for your cell phone to pick it up a kilometer away over Wi-Fi.
Well, DJI has, I don't have a Dave, you have what do you have? A Mavic or a Phantom? Did we lose Dave?
I heard a bunch of people cut out briefly, and then you came back, and now maybe Dave's gone. Maybe Discord's having trouble.
Now?
Yep,
Yes,
now we hear
we
you.
can hear you now.
Oh. Jeez.
Hi, Verizon guy.
I love.
Have you been talking this whole time?
No, I haven't, but I've been madly working across 3 machines trying to get back into the session. From what I heard,
my question to you was DJI drones. Does some of their tech transmit on a Wi-Fi band? Or
some does, and that's what they want to utilize. And to me, of what's of interest and what calmed me down when I read this announcement today is that everything they wrote is completely consistent with the remote ID ASTM standard. And they even quoted Philip Knoll, who was the co-chair along with Gabriel Cox, Brendan Schulman of DJI. VP there was also involved in the ASTM standard. So what DJI is doing is they're moving ahead and implementing the ASTM standard, which says we'll use either network or broadcast a Wi-Fi or a Bluetooth to a local phone. And we'll be able, in a phone app, we'll be able to query the drone in the sky and find out the digital license plate number. And so that'll be an alias, and it will not be the name and address of the operator of the drone.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and Bruce a couple of weeks ago asked which work group that was, and I said it was F-38 committee, and he said, no, what work group? And that the work group number is WK65041. And so that means a lot to ASTM people, and that's the remote ID and tracking committee, and that standard is going through balloting right now, and it's doing very well. So
Good.
That's a positive, and that's what we recommended to the FAA, that they base the remote ID on that standard.
Which also allows for non-equipped to essentially self-report,
Exactly.
which most hobbyists are going to fall within that. But one of the things that brings is an increased ability to do more complicated missions. So remote ID is going to open up the pathway for beyond visual line of sight, hopefully, and flight over people. So
I wonder if DJI will put that into the air units of the FPV gear. It certainly could be done, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it probably could be. I've not opened one up. Have you opened one up of your air units, Dan?
No, I'm just thinking it has a 5.8 gigahertz, broadcast.
Of course, yeah.
So it, if they can sneak that in at the same time as the video without having problems. Maybe it could be done.
It's a little different. It's not a Wi-Fi module. I mean,
Well, Wi-Fi modules are fairly inexpensive and fairly small these days.
No, true. But I mean, from what I've seen in on teardowns, it's not currently present like you would find in a Crossfire. You get both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. But so far, at least in the version 1, those modules aren't present. But yeah, maybe in the future.
Absolutely. And I mean that for some that might be a good option, for the air unit if you're doing more cinematic, more you're double using your aircraft, so for hobby and for commercial, because I mean the Cinewub scene is taking off pretty well, and I'd like to see that continue to grow.
So I bet DJI doesn't actually have to do technically Wi-Fi. It just has to be something that the 5.8 gigahertz chips on your cell phones could decode and display.
Yep.
So I don't know. It'll be curious to see.
Yeah. I wonder if it's a possibility right now then, because they are doing the control link as well.
Yeah. So there's definitely sending telemetry data and stuff. It's possible. I'm not sure what people would think about it, but it's possible, maybe.
Well, and I do know that some of the newer FR Sky transmitters are compatible via Bluetooth with an app, with the FR Sky app. So, there are some cross compatibility there too. So, all right. Well, since it's just us, I think I'll go ahead and wrap it up and give you guys your evenings back.
I did have a question.
Of course.
Yeah, regarding the, I don't have specifics, but I had read a week or two ago, who knows, maybe 3 weeks ago, regarding a drone corridor registered with the FAA now in New York.
Absolutely. Yep. Let me pull up that article real quick.
There's one in New York.
Yep.
It's up by Griffiths Air Force Base, and it's there's a nonprofit that's been working for I think 4 or 5 years up there, New Air, and the state has funded quite a bit of money, and they've been doing tests for in conjunction with the FAA, and now they have an approved corridor. So that's good news for New York.
So is that something that you see expanding to other states? And what's the primary purpose of it? Is it military, education, testing? Okay.
So it's going to be for testing for BVLOS, and this is going to give New Air and its partners ability to test, whatever it is they want to do for BVLOS. It excludes them from having to have, chase planes and excessive, amounts of spotters and all that kind of thing. But it's going to be mostly for government and private companies, is what the article says.
Okay, gotcha.
So I would imagine there's going to be a lot of, and I would imagine this would be expanding as tests go well, as remote ID becomes viable, and regulations start matching what UAS are capable of. And so I would definitely see this expanding. But
and so this is one of the angles that we're interested in is working with organizations like New Air to say, hey, we're a recreational group. We can come on up and help out. We can be FPV people can be helping hands on the odd test that you might need, and to get ourselves ingrained in that type of activity. And so we now know the CTO of New Air, and so hopefully an entree to get into and work with that group over time.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that might really expand the capabilities of some of the advanced university labs and graduate programs.
And I would imagine that it would. I know New York
Syracuse,
is.
Syracuse University is already there.
Yep.
Cornell is already there, and so those are one school in Syracuse, obviously, and the other in Ithaca, New York, which is right close by.
Right.
And the governor of New York is investing a lot in new tech for New York. So
yes,
that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so we I would personally anticipate that the 7 test centers across the country, that we're going to see, the other test centers follow suit and become corridors as well. That's just my own speculation, so not based on anything I've read.
Yeah.
Well, that would be cool.
So yeah, that's definitely a thing. Cool. All right. Well, good talk, actually. I wasn't expecting a kind of off the cuff, but hey, it works. So we will. We've got some news later on, I think this next week. So be on the lookout for some new stuff on the Facebook page. And I don't want to give it away, but Dave and I did have an interesting evening last night, and it was fun. So we'll drop that off on the Facebook when it airs, and then we'll pick this up on the next one. And thank you, Steve and Prelator, for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yep.
Good night, everyone.
Okay.
Right.